Deepwoken is a game with a lot to unpack, and as a new player, it is easy to become overwhelmed by the sheer amount of weapons, talents, mantras, and whatever else a newer player may find difficult. Inspired by Eclipse's recent series where he played through the game as a complete beginner, and as someone who has sunk way too many hours into this game, I wanted to take a look at how Deepwoken introduces brand new players into the world. So without wasting time, let's jump straight in. After booting the game on an account that has never played Deepwoken before, it will load you into the tutorial. This tutorial starts off by teaching you how to move around and interact with the world, the bare bones basics. Shortly after going downstairs, you will meet Captain Orlando, who teaches you how to equip your weapon, how to swing it, use the crit, how to block, and even a short minigame to grasp the fundamentals of parrying. After a short combat tutorial, he informs you that you can craft a campfire using sticks and light it with flint to heal yourself. The captain also introduces us to the equipment system, handing us a brace to reduce incoming damage. All in all, a very brief but important tutorial to understanding combat. Moving on, we are introduced to the antiquarian, who allows us to trade items in turn for notes. We are informed that we can use these notes to buy items such as training gear, which can be used to increase our physical attributes enough to power up. The captain explains that powering up is crucial to getting stronger in this world, and how talents play a key role as well. Finally, we are taken to the deck of the ship and we are allowed to walk around and interact with the NPCs who inhabit the area. And once we are done with that, we can talk to Captain Orlando once more, and he attempts to introduce us to mantras and how to use them, before being abruptly cut off by invaders from the Authority. Alright, well, we got the meat of the tutorial out of the way, and I hope you enjoyed that, because it's only going to go downhill from here. I'd like to take this time to talk about the good and the bad of the tutorial, starting off with the good. This tutorial teaches players the basic mechanics of playing the game, all while keeping it relatively entertaining. Players are taught how to attack and defend themselves, as well as how to use the antiquarian, and interact with NPCs and use mantras. Unfortunately, that's all I can really say this tutorial does well. As for the bad, well, I was extremely surprised upon replaying this tutorial and seeing how many important details were completely left out or missing in this tutorial. Firstly, the combat section didn't explain how tempo and venting worked, nor did it explain how feinting and dodge cancelling worked, both of which may be helpful to know when fighting a stronger enemy who's using all of these techniques. Alongside this, the hunger management system was not mentioned besides a sentence that explains how sitting at a campfire can refill your blood bar, which, funnily enough, requires food and water to replenish. But small little nitpicks aside, the segment that explained attribute points, leveling, and talents was the part that I felt needed to be the most in-depth, but was almost entirely empty. In my opinion, a short segment that included our character powering up and explaining rare cards, advanced cards, aces, folds, and even traits wouldn't have hurt. And this mantra introduction hurt me the most. The tutorial fails to explain how to modify your mantras, where to level up your mantras, and the stat requirements to level up mantras. All in all, I'd say the first part of this tutorial deserves a rating of 6 scrooms out of 10 just because it tried. Continuing on with the second part of the game tutorial, if you will call it that, we are spawned into Etris. If you decide to pick the correct dialogue on this NPC, he will inform you on where to buy training gear and where to get stronger. From which point a quest will be started that leads you to the docks. After reaching the docks and buying a boat, a marker is placed on Lower Rissia. Sailing to it will inform you to finish a quest, whatever that means, and open a chest. Shortly after finishing a quest, the game tells you to sail back to Etris and sell your newly found equipment to the antiquarian. And that's the end of the tutorial. And now, I don't want to lie to you, there isn't that much good to say about this end section of the tutorial. Like, yes, it does teach players how to sail around, and how to get to Lower Rissia. It teaches them that enemies will randomly spawn around islands, but then it just drops them in the middle of it. And why does it teach us to sail back to sell our things to the antiquarian? As a new player, am I expected to sell all of my gear and do nothing with it? Does the game want me to continue sailing back and forward between islands each chest I get? But okay, Let's say that I do end up farming at Reverie because I learned that sailing back and forward probably wasn't the best idea. I hit power 8 by some god-given miracle, and then I realized that killing 4 bandit events barely gives me enough XP to gain 1 attribute point. Not once in the tutorial has it mentioned that different events can give better XP, or even where I could find them. What am I supposed to do now? Listen, I get that this has good intentions, but the smallest mistake and it entirely loses its value. For example, the biggest mistake this quest suffers from is that it's locked behind a dialogue box with an NPC who the game doesn't even tell you to talk to. If a freshie doesn't even talk to the dude, then he's entirely fucked from the start. For a game that requires so much knowledge, this tutorial is really just not going to cut it. And for that reason, the second part of this tutorial gets a rating of 2 scrooms out of 10. Sorry, not sorry. So how do we fix this hot mess? Well, I'd start by expanding the first tutorial. Players absolutely need to know how venting works alongside the tempo and ether system. Imagine getting in a combo and you don't even know that you have a get out of jail free card. We should also be teaching players how mantras use ether and how that ether cost increases when modifiers are used on them, alongside teaching them how to modify their mantras, which modifications work on which mantras like logstones and lenses, but also more general modifications like deep gems, how to roll cancel and the innate 2 rolls that the game gives you, how to feint and how to mantra feint, powering up and selecting talents, introducing card rarities, how to use Mystic to gain certain cards, introducing lives and how powering up gives you a life, and finally, hunger, thirst, and blood management and how to cook food. A tutorial like this isn't going to be short and sweet, nor will it be perfect, but I think it will introduce players to the basics much quicker than not. There is of course more that I'd want to teach a player, but we'll have to cover that in another video. As for the second half of the tutorial, I believe it needs an entire overhaul. The quest should start as soon as you spawn in, placing a marker on the NPC that you should talk to. After reaching the docks, a small conversation is started with the shipmaker in which he tells you which islands to visit based off of your current power, and what to do on those islands to get started. After sailing to any of the islands recommended by the shipmaker, a small task list will contain areas of interest to visit. For example, Reverie may have a marker for Sharko Cave, Bandit Village, Burning Stone Gardens, and even the newly created job board. Once you finish exploring and reach a certain power, you can return to any shipmaker and they will repeat the same quest with a new island, all the way up until Starswept. Overall, both of these tutorials should cover a lot more than what is currently in the game, allowing players to follow a much more linear path instead of being confused when they end up somewhere they shouldn't be. Anyways, that's about all I've got to say for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and maybe even subscribe if you haven't. Leave a comment if there's something you want to talk about or if you disagreed or even agreed with anything in this video, and I'll catch you on the next one.